and welcome to Akancha Against Harassment, your cyber safety podcast 101. And today we are back again with Karan Joseph, our advocate friend from Bangalore. Karan has been on our podcast a couple of times, and there's been very, very positive engagement, and it's been very informative, very educational. So I really want to thank you, Karan, for taking this time out and coming back to the podcast.
Always a pleasure, Akancha. Always a pleasure.
And somehow every time I speak to you, I just can't get over that first event we did in Bangalore. And, it's been a very, very interesting journey. And I'm really thankful to you because you've been a part of this journey on a constant basis. And we keep reaching out to you and we keep asking for information. And you've been very, very patient and very cooperative. So thank you.
Something I enjoy doing. And I think we've come a long way since that first event in Bangalore.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So, Karan, today I had something specific in mind. And, considering this Me Too movement, this whole uprising right now in the country and worldwide, I thought that if we could chat about a few steps which the victims should now take after having had the courage to speak up against their abusers. And several of them have even named their abusers. Fine. What happens next? What are those 3 or 4 steps they can take? And there are some questions around it which I would like to ask you. So let's start with a question. Karan, there have been some cases where people have spoken up after 8 years or 10 years or 15 years of that abuse. Is there any timeline according to the law that, you have to file a complaint within X number of years, or is there any restriction like that?
So criminal law in India does not actually prescribe any time limit. There's no limitation period that's been prescribed by the law here as far as criminal cases are concerned. But these criminal cases of the nature that we are talking about, where the imprisonment exceeds 3 years. So the offences that we are referring to, there's absolutely no limitation. However, whoever is filing a complaint will obviously have to explain the delay and the circumstances that prevented her or him from filing a complaint previously.
So let me understand this, that as far as the victim is concerned, they'll have to explain why there has been a delay. However, as per the law, there is no time limit for filing a criminal case, correct?
Correct. So there's no time limit prescribed by criminal law in India. The only time limit is prescribed with respect to offences that are punishable up to 3 years. Now, the offences that we are referring to and speaking about are offences where the punishment is much more than 3 years.
Right.
As such, there's no limitation in law or some fixed period within which a complaint is to be filed.
Correct.
However, when you do file a complaint in court, if you are filing it belatedly, it is advisable that you state the facts that prevented you from filing this complaint at the initial stage. You're going to have to explain why it took the victim so long to come to court to approach the authorities and file a complaint.
Got it. Understood. Question number 2, Karan. So, can you please explain in very, very simple language, what are those few 3, 4 evidence? See, because law works on evidence, right? What is that evidence which the victim can produce to support their case? Because it's been a long time. So, can you just name a few of those evidence?
So I think we've seen some cases where screenshots have been used widely. There are emails that have been used widely. I don't think we're at a stage where we're going to be able to find written letters, because I don't think too many people write letters anymore. But I would think I've seen cases where phone conversations are recorded.
Right.
There are apps that help you do that.
Correct.
Then screenshots, printouts of a message trail, printouts of emails. So any record that you may have of what you consider to be harassment or consider to be an offense. Right? Some sort of record. It could be an electronic record, it could be a photograph, it could be absolutely anything. But we need to make sure that there is a paper trail of some sort.
Right. Got it. So let's say, question number 3. There's a victim. The victim has kept this paper trail or, this set of evidence. Now what? what does he or she do? Do they go to a police station, or do they file it somewhere online? What's the next step?
So the offences that we're talking about are largely what are called cognizable offences, which means that you can actually go to a police station and you can file a complaint. You can produce this evidence, this documentary evidence that I was referring to. You can produce that along with your complaint and ask for an FIR to be registered.
Right.
Right. Now, in the event that they do not do so, I mean, let's be honest, in all likelihood, they will and they should.
Yes.
But in the unlikely event that they do not do so, you can also go to a magistrate and file a private complaint.
Okay.
Along with this documentary evidence.
Okay. So can you just, for sake of clarity, just explain what is the difference between filing an FIR and what is the difference and how is it different from filing a private complaint with the magistrate?
So with an FIR, what you do is you go to a police station and you complain saying, look, this is the offense. The police take a note of your statement and register an FIR against the accused.
Right.
Then the FIR is presented before the nearest magistrate, and the magistrate will either ask for the police to investigate the complaint,
right,
and take further steps.
Right.
So that's when the police machinery swings into action,
right,
and goes ahead and investigates your complaint. Now, of course, while investigating, they may also arrest the accused.
Right.
It's quite possible. More often than not, they ask you to bring in more witnesses, collect witness statements, collect statements from the accused,
right,
and form a preliminary impression of what they believe has happened and whether an offense has been made out or not. Now, on the contrary, for whatever reason, if the police do not accept your complaint and do not register an FIR, you will then approach a magistrate straight away and say, look, this is what has happened. These are the offenses that have taken place against me. Thereafter, the magistrate will examine you, will take your statement on oath, and either direct the police to carry out an investigation or issue summons to the accused and try the case himself or herself.
Understood. So, I'm going to keep asking you a few very basic questions so that it helps anyone who's listening to go to the magistrate and file this private complaint. Do you need a lawyer? Do you need a legal counsel? Or can anyone approach the magistrate even on their own and file this complaint?
It's preferable to have a lawyer because you're going to need one to help you around in procedure. So procedurally, you may need one, but there's absolutely no bar in you going or approaching the magistrate directly and filing a complaint.
Got
of course, I think, and I've said this before as well, there are lawyers who will, if you don't want them appearing for you, there are lawyers who will at least guide people on procedure and let them know how to go about things.
Right. Right. Understood. And Karan, what kind of lawyer should a victim look for? And I'm specifically speaking about these complaints around Me Too movement. Should they be looking for a criminal lawyer? Should they be looking for, what kind of lawyer? And are there any resources where, they can look up these lawyers and, find them more easily?
So I would think a good criminal lawyer always helps. But given the sensitive nature of the movement,
right,
I would think more than anything, apart, of course, you're also obviously going to look for merit, but the people are going to have to find an empathetic lawyer. I think that's most important.
Most important,
right?
Yeah.
So I think they're going to, I wouldn't say they have that task cut out because you'd be surprised by the number of empathetic lawyers who have come out and offered their help to victims.
Sure.
Right? But I think that would trump everything else. You need someone who believes in you, of course, passes no value judgment.
Right.
Right? And someone who will represent you in court to your satisfaction.
Correct. So,
and I believe, just to answer the second part of your question,
yeah.
I believe that, there's a list that's doing the rounds as well about lawyers who have offered their help pro bono.
Yes.
Right? Of course, in the interest of transparency, I must disclose that I am also on that list.
Sure. Thanks, yeah.
So there are a bunch of people, and I think, this list is certainly not exhaustive.
Right. Understood. And the next question, Karan, a lot of victims also very rightfully feel that this process is going to be very long, or it's going to be very expensive. So, I mean, I know there are no specific timelines, and it's very subjective to every case. But I need to just give them some confidence that if the due process is followed, I think it's better for everyone involved, because if the due process is not followed and not taken to logical conclusion in any aspect of our life, it just does more harm than good, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. If they don't go through with filing the complaint and seeing it to its logical conclusion, it only serves to embolden the perpetrator,
Right.
right? I think it's quite possible that, the victim, if the victim doesn't follow through on what she or he should, the perpetrator is going to walk away scot-free. And I think it's safe to say in these days that public memory is very short.
True.
So in 6 months to a year, people would have forgotten and would have moved on. And most
That's
importantly,
true.
also apart from justice being important to the victim, I also think that the victim owes it to the world in REM, in the sense that they need to ensure that they go through with this so that it doesn't happen to anyone else,
Absolutely.
right? So I think
Absolutely.
in that sense, yes, they have to, you know, see the entire thing out. Yes, it's time consuming. I can't honestly tell you whether it'll take a year, 2 years, 3 years. I cannot pigeonhole it in terms of how long it will take,
Yeah.
right? But however long it takes, I would think that one has to go through it and see it to its logical conclusion. In terms of expenses, yes, it could be expensive. It could be free, because there are people who have offered to do this for free. And like I said before, once if charge is framed, if a charge sheet is filed against the accused,
Right.
these offences are then committed to trial, which means the state takes over. The state steps into the shoes of the victim,
Right.
right? And it's the state that, in a sense, prosecutes the accused.
Correct.
So, I mean, I don't see what the concern then is about costs and so on, because the state is
Absolutely.
taking
Got
care of
that.
it for you. You'll obviously have to come to court and present your evidence. You'll have to be cross-examined,
Right.
right? But that's due process. That's how it goes.
Fantastic. And Karan, just, obviously we are not lawyers, but just very broadly, most of these cases, the Me Too movement, it refers to sexual harassment at workplace broadly, people using their position of power and strength, right, to abuse. Can you just broadly just tell us one or two sections, which are applicable on these offenses in general? What are those 2, 3 different sections which are applicable?
Right. So the Prevention of Sexual Harassment at the Workplace Act has been in here in India since 2013. Right.
Right.
So if anyone is being harassed at their workplace, now of course harassment is very subjective. What
Correct.
one may see as harassment may be different to what the other does. But if someone were to feel harassed, they are then to file a complaint with the committee. Right? Every organization
Right.
has to have a complaint committee.
The ICC.
That's right. The ICC, the Internal Complaint Committee, that has been constituted under the POSH Act.
Correct.
Right? So thereafter, notice is then issued to the accused.
Correct.
Then there's a mini hearing of sort that takes place.
Right.
Right? And this ICC, of course, comprises of women members. For the most part, they also have an outsider.
Right.
Right? So then the ICC will come out with a report,
Yes.
its findings, and then give recommendations to the employer. The employer, of course, thereafter has a certain period, if I'm not mistaken, I think 60 days or 90 days to act on this
Right.
and take action against the employee concerned.
Correct.
So I think every organization has to have an ICC. And, to be fair, I see it this mechanism being employed very often, and I think to great success as well.
Sure. So, actually, I'm going to reframe the question. The question which I was trying to ask you is that now, when women are going and filing these complaints, what are those 2, 3 legal acts sections under which, broadly these crimes fall, these sexual harassment cases?
Right. So there are a couple of sections. Of course, a lot of, if we're talking about lewd pictures, right, then we're looking at offences being made both under the Information Technology Act and the Indian Penal Code.
Right.
Right? In terms of sexual harassment in specific, there is a section under the Indian Penal Code, section 354A.
Right.
Right? So this section was inserted after the Nirbhaya incident.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fairly new section. It's just a couple of years old.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this section, in fact, says that a man who commits any of the following acts, that's physical contact and advances, and that could include, unwelcome and explicit sexual overtures, a demand for sexual favors, showing pornography against the will of a woman, making sexually colored remarks.
Right.
Right? So now sexual harassment, at least under the IPC, is very broad.
Right.
So I would think this is the section that they can file a case under.
So again, in
354A.
354A. Now, I'm just going to ask another question attached to this. Can this section be applied to an older case? So suppose somebody files a case of, 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Is this current section applicable, in that situation?
That's an excellent case, and the answer, strictly speaking, will be no, because it wasn't an offense at the time. So this is what we call prospective. Right? So we have to go into when the offense was committed. Yes, it dates back to the offense.
Right.
And at the time of the offense, if this was not punishable in law, then we cannot use this section.
Got it.
So there are other sections as well. For example, section 354, which is assault on a woman to outrage her modesty.
Right.
Right. So there are sections even prior to the amendment. However, post the amendment, post Nirbhaya, the law has been strengthened.
Right. So this was really insightful. So, it's important, and I'm asking you these very basic questions so that there's clarity in mind of victims that even though now there might be newer sections, but at that point in time, if they did not exist, they do not apply to it. Am I right?
That's right. We always have to look at the law that was available or in force at the time of the offense.
Understood, Karan. That's a very, very helpful point. And so, Karan, I'm sure that a lot of people who hear this will have many more questions, and they may have a lot of specific questions. So I am going to request you for your time once people have heard these few steps, and maybe they'll get some clarity, some perspective. And I really hope you will make time for us again, and we will speak about this a little more in detail. But if there's anything else which you want to tell us in this regard before we wind up, please go ahead.
The only thing that I would like to say, of course, is apart from saying that it's always a pleasure to be here, and I'm more than happy to come back and address any specific questions or group of questions that your listeners may have, is that I feel that your listeners, particularly victims, should not be disillusioned and should not shy away from due process, which is, if you have been wronged, please, for heaven's sake, file a complaint and see it through to its logical end.
Correct.
Right? So don't be disillusioned by due process. I think as a society, we are here only, and we've reached where we have reached only because of due process.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think we can't sacrifice due process.
Yeah.
Right? We need to see it through. And if you're right, you will be proved right.
I'm completely with you, because been there, done that. I recently filed a complaint, and it really took a lot of time and some amount of patience and, back and forth, some paperwork. A court date is going to come, and I have to appear before the judge, and I have to, go for that hearing. I know, but I also know that this is the right process.
No, but see, I understand. I know what you're talking about. I understand that I wouldn't call it a pain, but it's a task for you to do.
It's a task. Yeah.
Now imagine, you're right. Now imagine how much worse it's going to be for the accused.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And the accused is going to think 10 times, if not 100 times, before he does something like this again.
Absolutely. And
if you're able to do that, I think job well done.
Yeah, because for all that tedious task and tiredness and spending that time at the station, writing out the FIR in Marathi and all of that look on the accused's face, at that point when he was arrested, and the whole body language had changed, and he was really fearful, and he was writing out apologies. That's really important because we all have to set some precedent. You're absolutely right. It's all been worth it.
There you go.
Wonderful. So, thank you, Karan, and I'm going to speak to you sometime very soon. And really, thanks to lawyers like you who have come forward, who are extending their support, who are one with everybody else. We all are going to get this together. I keep saying this. We are all going to get this together.
Absolutely, Akancha. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you, Karan. And for everyone who's listening in, if you have any specific questions for Karan, if you have any questions for me, if you have anything specific to ask regarding your case, please tweet to me. My handle is AKANCHAS. You can also send me an email on Hello Akancha, that's HELLOAKANCHA @gmail.com. And all I can tell you is that see it through. We are all here to help you, and stay aware, stay safe.